So much for the countdown. Maybe that's what the problem was.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Can you hear us? Thumbs up.
Can anybody hear us out there? It says we're live, but like that's so. Yes, it says we're live now. Are we live? Yeah. Hey guys, are we live? Because okay, yeah, we're live. All right. So we were having some technical difficulties for a change because look who showed up. And so hello all, welcome. It is Thursday night generational change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter and I am back in the studio.
He's back in the studio and it's been problems.
It's been one thing after the other
after
the other.
Oh yeah, it's just been problem. Do you want to show off your award? Peter got an award.
Jen is wearing a keffiyeh, which represents.
Well, it was cold when I walked in here, but yeah. And you?
And I'm succeeding in capitalism.
Mr. Capital, look at this award.
It
says #1 expansion agent by GCI.
Peter Hager, the cola team.
Isn't that cool? Building, destroying Turtle Island one concrete structure at a time.
Don't blame me. I'm actually trying to prevent that type of stuff from happening. At least I'm doing the best I can. Make sure to smash that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure to share as best you can. Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it. So I had a little bit of an odyssey, to say the least. For the second time in my life, I actually missed a flight which was out of my control. I was supposed to fly out of Pensacola. It was usually an hour drive. He was
supposed to fly.
Yeah, I was going to get to the airport approximately an hour before takeoff. It's a very quick airport to get through. It would have taken me like 10 minutes.
And instead he drove down.
I had to drive down because of an absolutely insane traffic jam that
oh my God.
was basically like an hour and a half. It's like a 10-mile backup, like nothing you could possibly imagine. And
he missed his flight.
I had to make a decision. I had to decide whether or not I was actually going to make the drive. And I decided to do it.
Guys, you don't know. It's really far.
It is. It was 8 hours just to get to Naples.
It's far.
So I had to make a decision because I didn't know I was winning anything. I thought this was strictly for our team, which we did win.
Well, thank God you were there.
Yeah,
oh my God. What if you didn't get your award?
Well, some people don't show up. You'd be surprised. But granted, commercial is an extremely small part of real estate. Most people are residential agents, and I want nothing to do with that stuff. For me, it's more about, what are the things in real estate that we need? We need industrial bays where people can run their businesses out of. If you're in Miami, maybe it's because you have to distribute certain, items that.
Yeah, I think we should shut that shit down.
Well, that's your decision.
That is. I think there needs to be a moratorium on all non-essential building in South Florida. Yes, I do.
Well, South Florida
and other very climately threatened places. Yes, I do. I think the fact that they keep building more and more and more housing for people to move to a place that has sewage floating in the streets when it rains a lot is problematic.
It is.
Everything south of Lake Okeechobee will eventually go back to the sea where it came from. And I think that we should be, thinking in terms of higher ground. But no. They just keep building. Like it's really like there's no tomorrow.
No, there is no tomorrow, but that is what it's going to be like until there isn't one. And that's generally how most people treat capitalism, which is eventually somebody's going to get caught holding the bag and it's not going to be worth the money, the paper that it's
well, that's the thing. It's a game of like hot potato.
Now, down here, it really is.
Yeah. At some point, people are going to be stuck with an unsellable, uninsurable property. And, it's problematic. That's why people do not come. I feel like I'm channeling my inner Kamala. Do not come here.
I totally want to come.
Do not come here.
I totally want to come.
Don't come.
Those were really good ads. But it's true. There are too many people down here. There's such few green space. And the only real green space that you do have, particularly in Broward County, are in the extremely red areas of West Davie and Southwest Ranches. That's about it. In the conservative areas, they protect green space. The very blue areas, like Hollywood and Fort Lauderdale, you will never see an end to it.
No, those commissioners have never met a developer that they haven't wanted to get in bed with.
Nope. But I think it's also a reflection of how the parties have switched in terms of who they represent. There is a substantial amount of the working class that now votes Republican than ever before.
And why is that?
Because the Democratic Party abandoned workers around the time of Ronald Reagan. Go figure.
It's true. I wonder what's going on with that Elon Musk sewage project in Fort Lauderdale. They were supposed to be building that tunnel
I don't know.
tunnel of sludge.
Go talk to the mayor. See how he's doing. Seeing if he got a nice fancy kickback.
He's he's a piece of Anyway,
but let's not get into too much nonsense.
No.
Let's talk about something positive, like
what's positive?
What's it like growing up a Jewish girl in South Florida? Is that where Sarah is from?
No.
Oh, so you're not from there.
No.
Can you
want me to do it? Then I'm taking my microphone. Fine, you're screwed without your microphone. I can't help you here. You can have your pretend microphone. Okay.
As long as you guys can hear me.
Everyone can hear you.
I project
my neighbors can hear you.
Yeah, the neighbors can hear you. That's good.
Okay. So as you guys know, for a while, I've been telling you about our guest tonight, that this isn't necessarily a political discussion. It's just, like I said, I will use this podcast to meet people that I want to meet. It's just what I do. In any event, so if you guys are not familiar, there is this really cool YouTube show called Cults to Consciousness. And I watched that, and our guest was on that, and I saw her and I thought, I need to read that, and I need to meet her. And so that's what I'm going to do. That's what we're going to do right now. And so our guest is Dr. Sarah Glass. Her book is Kissing Girls on Shabbat. And I really liked it. And will you stop? Stop.
Sarah Glass, welcome to Generation.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on something that's definitely probably outside your genre.
Oh, of course. You seem like you like to talk about real things, and I like to talk about real things, so we're on the same page.
Okay, so you heard my little intro. I had seen you on that show, Cults of Consciousness, and I just thought you were so cute. I'm sorry, I did. I just thought and then I did the audiobook. I did your audiobook, which is why I never have a book to hold up. I never have anything. And I kept feeling like I just wanted to hug you. When I was listening to your story, and especially now, that I'm a mom and I've got a 24 and an almost 19. And I think that's how young you were when where this story picks up. And it was just I felt so much for you. So why don't you, I'm sure you've been talking about your book when you go on. So why don't you give a little bit about your background, just so people know this is not bothering you, right?
Oh,
okay. You didn't even notice.
I am a therapist in New York City.
Okay, right. Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, because I don't know where this is not about that. But Sarah is from a Hasidic sect in New York and grew up in one of those very insulated communities. So I'll let you take it from there, what your story was and how you ended up where you felt the need to write your book.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for asking. I come from this world where everything is so binary and black and white and yes and no. And now I get to live in a way where I can just be more open to the world and to people and human beings, which is great. So I was raised in Hasidic Brooklyn, which is exactly like you've seen on the documentaries. Men in fur hats. My father wore this big fur hat, long black coat. Mother was in a wig, full long dresses and skirts. And I was raised to go to an all-girls school. The idea was I would marry a boy when the time was right, which was when I was 17, 18, or maybe 19, from the school a few blocks away. And then we would just have many children and continue to build a big Hasidic family. But I kept falling in love with girls. So that made my life a little complicated. I also had some dreams that were not dreams I was supposed to have about wanting to be, really wanted to be a psychotherapist. So, I was already having these little rebellious feelings and thoughts, and it set the stage for a very complicated life that now is my book, Kissing Girls on Shabbat.
I think that your level of emotional resilience and maturity at the age that you were when you were going through that is astonishing to me. It is. Mm-hmm. I cannot fathom. It's very inspired that you were so young, and we're basically, you were trying, almost sounds like in some ways being kept from doing what you really wanted to do. You had to keep negotiating. Well, I'll just get this degree instead of this degree. Like you had to keep negotiating this path. And the fact that you had the wherewithal to commute like you did and do all of that is really impressive. So like there's always, you have some drive in you that must have known that there was something outside of what you saw.
Yeah, I do have like this weird like ability to just push forward, and I don't know where that's from. I also am so blessed to have that. My dad was like that. He built his own company. He came to America on a boat when he was 12 from Israel, started a Judaica company. It became one of the most successful ones. So there's like that ingenuity in my family. I also am so blessed to not have had severe mental illness and to have been like blessed with the ability to get through college without a lot of educational background. And that's why I continue to speak up, because not everybody has those privileges. Like not every single person who's born into a restrictive culture is able to like climb the mountains that I did with their bare fingers bleeding and just keep climbing, you know? And so I think like for me, as I've gotten to the other side of it, I'm like, I'm here now. I live in Manhattan. I'm out. I'm gay. I'm proud, but I can't stop speaking, because who is going to speak for all the people who are not yet safe or able to speak?
Yeah. And that's a good point to segue into one of the things. And I think this was something that you focused on a lot on the Cults of Consciousness, was the medical aspect of what you went through. And just, you know, as a frame of reference, my husband's a urologist. And so I have been like, and we've been together since college. So like I've been party to the whole process, and I totally see exactly what you were saying and how that would have been handled exactly like that. And so talk a little bit about what that was like, being like not having really your own consenting voice, is what it sounds like. Like you weren't able to make your own consenting choice in a hospital.
Yes. So I, at 19 years old, like had my first medical experience at a hospital because I had my first miscarriage. This is like just weeks after my wedding. And then I had a baby like at 20, and then another baby at 22. This is just like par for the course for a young ultra-Orthodox wife. And in the hospital setting, like it was so hard to be so like to feel like so othered and different. Because in my world, it was like my sisters had babies at that age. You know, I was expected to do that. But then I went to the hospital and suddenly I was this weirdo in a long skirt and a wig. And everybody else was just like doctors and scrubs and ponytails and just having their regular American day. And I felt like they looked at me and made certain assumptions. So for example, when I was in labor with one of my children, I really like was in this long extended labor, and they wanted to give me an option of like speeding the labor up. I had an epidural, and they're like, we can add this other drug to help you speed your labor up.
Pitocin for people
Pitocin, yes. If anybody's had a baby, you know.
Yeah.
But then like my husband said he thought we should wait. And so the doctors listened to my husband. You know, I don't know if they would do that with a couple that didn't look the way we did. I feel like they would have said to the woman, like, oh, do you like maybe want to consider this anyway? I know he's saying this. Do you guys want to have a conversation? Like that's how I would handle things like that as a therapist in the world. But that's not how I was treated. And it's interesting because since the Cults of Consciousness, like YouTube episodes came out, I've gotten so many messages from medical professionals saying what you're describing is what we do. You're right. That is how we treat you guys on the units. So it's been extremely validating.
And you know why, though. I'm going to give you this in a mix. I know you want, but you know why that is.
I'm just here. I'm just an
You're just your arm candy. I mean, to some extent, that was ingrained in them after years of probably being told off by many of the Hasidim in whatever context it was, and basically told to mind their place and that this was a religious thing. And, you know, so, but I think it's important for healthcare people to get over that is the thing.
Yeah. Also for everybody, like making assumptions about somebody because of the way they're dressed is not the same thing as being culturally competent.
Right.
Cultural competence is asking the person in the hijab, in the wig, in whatever the outfit is, to like, how can I help you? How can I be sensitive to you? What do you need? Instead of assuming that everybody in that outfit has the same needs or beliefs, you know?
Yeah.
Sarah, obviously, we can't ignore what's going on, obviously, in Israel right now. But one thing that I think would be very helpful for a lot of people who don't understand, when you see so much projection that comes from people of the Jewish faith in particular pockets of this country, New York City and Miami being probably the two most obvious, where there is such a degree of insulation from the outside world that the reactions are so self-serving that they really don't understand how people within the culture react to certain things versus those that are on the outside looking in. It's like a double-edged sword in many ways. Can you explain what it was like growing up in such an insulated community like the one that you grew up in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I just said this in a talk the other day. It's not like we didn't have banned books. The whole world was banned, and we had allowed books. So we were not allowed to go to the public library, watch movies, have a TV at home. Everything was banned from when I was like from a really young age. My school library had a couple of books that were not Jewish, but the librarian's job was to read the books before they went on the shelf and black out any words that weren't appropriate for young Hasidic girls. And you know me, I'm like such a little rebel. Even in 7th grade, I remember scratching the whiteout off of the word and then like trying to peek under the black marker. And the word that had been blacked out in my book was college. College was an inappropriate word for a young Hasidic girl. So that is the extent of the insulation. And so what happens when you're like that protected from the outside world is they can tell you whatever the hell they want. And that's all the information you have. All you can do is like analyze the information you have, even if you're taught to think critically. But if you can only think critically in the box, So I had no idea that there were people who were like really democratic out in the world. I thought everybody was a Republican like my dad. I thought most people had like very clear views on race that were not very that were not great.
Okay, so just as a frame of reference, because you probably don't know, so I was raised in North Miami Beach, Ashkenazi Jewish. My family was originally from Brooklyn Heights. My mom's from Philadelphia, and I was raised Zionist. I was raised I was raised in a very secular but Jewish, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, but down here in North Miami Beach. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so very, very brainwashed for me regarding Zionism. And it took a huge amount of time for me to deprogram that. And that is now how I can relate to people escaping any particular mindset. Like it took me about 10 years, like it was a process to get there. And I was already 40. So like the fact that people are able to do that younger is very impressive to me.
Yeah, that's a really good example of deconstructing an entire belief system and having to really check it against your soul and your gut and see how you feel. And people don't know this about Hasidic Jews, but I was raised anti-Zionist.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that, right? You would think like, oh, you're Jewish. But we actually, like, one of the interesting things that happened when my son was in a Jewish ultra-Orthodox yeshiva is every single year his yeshiva would have a bike-a-thon and the kids would be given like these amazing prizes. You can get this light up basketball or the bike or, this like amazing Nintendo Switch if you win the bike-a-thon. So it was like everyone wanted to go to the bike-a-thon. And I didn't realize until later, every single year they scheduled it on the day of the Israeli Day parade so that their students would not go to the parade. They couldn't say you can't go to the parade, right? But they could have a bike-a-thon on that day. That's how anti-Zionist, like ultra-Orthodox Jews are.
Yeah.
And it's like been fascinating to me to be out in the world, like having all these assumptions be made, especially being a Jewish author at this time with the title of my book having Shabbat in it and Israel being mentioned as a location in my book because it is like a location that my family visited, And I hadn't gotten to really thoughtfully comb through every single reference before publication of this book. And so that's been like something I've been navigating as like I've been out more publicly.
It's hard as a therapist. And I want to say I have so a very good friend of mine, and this is kind of like somehow related, but is a Jewish woman married to a Palestinian woman. Okay. And they're my friends here, and her therapist, after that she had been seeing for a long time, that had helped her with her postpartum and all this stuff, after October 7th, started posting some very anti-Palestinian, very pro-Zionist like stuff, and not in a remotely neutral way. And so my friend actually emailed her therapist just to say, look, this makes me very uncomfortable. Like I can't go to you. Like, this makes me very uncomfortable. And instead of doing anything, she basically told her to, oh, well, and then she just started doing it more. And I'm thinking that is one of the worst therapists. Like, I can't even fathom. And so I do think that when you do have patients out there in the world that come to you for no judgment, that it is you have an extra duty to not take a stand on things like that. Like also as someone who is very informed now on this, I am aware that Hasidic Jews are anti-Zionist. And we actually had, a few weeks ago, we had Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro on, I don't know if you know him. Not that you all know each other, but you know, you all know each other.
He's probably my cousin's brother's cousin. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, so years ago, I looked up, my dad's last name is Pilchik. My maiden name is Pilchik. And there was some Rebbe up there that was Rebbe Pilchik, and everyone just assumed, like, no, we don't know each other. I don't know who that is. But yeah.
One of the difficult things about not just being a lesbian, but when you grow up in that.
He speaks from personal experience.
Yeah, I do. Well,
yeah, it's really hard. Yeah.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But the point is, the biggest issue I have, because I'm very agnostic. I do believe in the possibility of a high power. I do not discount that possibility. However, organized religion to me is all bullshit. And the biggest reason why it's all bullshit is because everyone wants to point to that religion, that religion. At the end of the day, it is all about subjugating women. 100% full stop. And I think you can definitely speak to what that experience is like, about how you are just baby machines, do what you're told, do not try to be educated. Even though it's a small part of society compared to what it once was, it's still something that I think deeply affects the community that you come from. Would you agree with that?
So how about I use that as a jumping off point? I think there's definitely a subjugation of women. Today right now it was a Jewish fast day today. It's a day before the holiday of Purim, and Jewish Hasidic men have to fast today until sundown. Interestingly, in Hasidic culture, the women did not have to fast on this day, because the women's job, their job of like raising and bearing the children, was considered so primary and important that most of the other things that were required by men in the culture, women were absolved of. You could pray or not pray. It was like, great job if you get to pray. If you're taking care of your kids, don't worry. Sing with your kids, give them breakfast. That's your primary job. So there are some ways in which, it's like, I think Hasidic Jews are the OG trad wives. It's like, you're going to be the traditional wife, and we're going to give you all the benefits you need to make that happen, in terms of like religious obligation. But that said, I think the biggest problem is a lack of choice. Like, that you don't get to, because you're assigned female at birth, you don't get to say like, oh, actually, that's not so me. There is no ability to say like what you want, or even to think about what you want. I didn't know that I was allowed to want. And I feel like that was the biggest problem there, rather than, I didn't feel like my husbands at any point were really trying to hurt me. even though it would seem like that. I felt like my husbands were trying, like I married one man and then I married another man. I tried really hard not to be gay and some didn't work.
How'd that work out?
I was super gay.
Sarah, you just didn't pray hard enough.
I know.
Did it wrong.
Maybe if I married like another few men, I don't know, but like I'm a flaming homosexual.
Yeah,
so that's
no,
how that
and,
works.
but I really did. I think you did a really good job in your book, because I obviously have no idea who your husbands are, but the perception was not very negative. Like, it wasn't like they were bad or mean or abusive. Like, I did not. It didn't feel like that at all. It was just, they're also, to me, they're victims of the same system. They're victims of the same brainwashing, especially your first husband, in terms of constantly having to ask for permission for everything. And when you talk about lack of control, can you please explain how you have to get permission to extend being able to stay on birth control?
Yeah. Like, so your job as a Jewish couple, really, it's really for the men and women. Honestly,
Mhm.
like, so you need to ask the rabbi if you can use birth control. That was the rule. I had to ask the rabbi. I had my first baby, and then I asked the rabbi, and I got permission to be on birth control for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, I was exhausted. I was in grad school, 20 years old. I had a 6-month-old baby. And the rabbi did not grant me an extension because I didn't have a physical or mental problem. And so my children are 15 months apart because I just got pregnant right away with my next child. It was like baby machine, and then I had to really, really fight after my daughter was born. I was like, I said to the rabbi, like, I think I'm going to get divorced. I don't think this marriage is working. And even then he wouldn't give me permission. There was one point where I was anemic and I was like, thank God I'm anemic. Like, if there is a God, God made me anemic so that was a good enough reason.
Right, because now you had a health
That
concern.
was a health, exactly. And they want you healthy so that you can continue to reproduce, as per the Bible. I don't think it's like the rabbi cares like how many children you have, but he cares to follow the word of God as he sees it and wanted to rule correctly. So yeah, that's complicated. As a therapist now, like, I actually get a lot of clients who are men and women and people of all genders who are from communities like that. And I feel like the men are often panicking too, because they're like, we're going to have another baby. I have 4 kids with this woman I barely knew before I married her. I'm not sure if I want to be here. And now I have no control over whether to have another child. So I've actually had conversations with Hasidic men saying,
Wow.
by the way, there's something called a vasectomy, and you don't have to tell anybody, and you can get one.
So what I just heard translation in my head is that my husband and I should go up to your area, neck of the woods where you're from, and he should hand out business cards. That's what I'm hearing right there, loud and clear.
Actually, right. It's yeah, and not to assume that Hasidic men don't want to be informed. He should hand them out in Yiddish. Be like, you want birth control?
Yeah.
I got
And
you.
what's funny is, like, if I heard Yiddish, I'd recognize it because my grandmother and my bubby both spoke Yiddish. And so, like, my mom understands it. She can't really speak it because it's been so many years. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that was purposefully taken away.
The Yiddish or the
Yeah, in lieu of Hebrew in Israel. They forced them to give up
Mm.
speaking Yiddish and speak Hebrew when they became their nation. I just wanted to ask you, so where are you now with the religion thing? Because, like, that's a very deep place to be in a religion to come all the way out of, right? Like, so me, I'm an atheist. I've never believed, ever, never thought that. I've always been secular, but, like, how was that when you realized that you were fine just the way you are?
So there was this one Passover where my second husband and I used to go to Miami Beach every Passover and every Sukkot, North Miami Beach. And we would be like, the people that are annoying that come to North Miami Beach and clog up the pizza stores and traffic and rent all the cars. And like, you hate us because you live there and you're trying to live there and we're just there. I know. So that was us. And so we would be there every Passover, and we were more like modern Orthodox. And I remember sitting on the balcony of our like little condo. It was like everyone stayed in their grandparents' condos because they had apartments. So we're on the balcony with our friend who had started to like sort of rebel and not be so religious. And we were all smoking up some weed or something. And he said at some point, he's like, what if the Jews were on shrooms in the desert? Like, what if they were high? They were high as a kite. And they saw this vision of this man coming from the sky holding the tablets. And they were just like, oh my God, that's the thing. We all have to do this. And then there was a golden cow. And like and I was like, that actually is the most plausible explanation I may have heard to this point in my Jewish education about like Mount Sinai. And that gave me, yeah. So that gave me permission to question not just individual facets of the religion, but the premise.
Right.
And once I gave myself permission to question the premise, that made everything else a lot easier. The next day I was renting a cabana on the holiday using my credit card at the hotel next door, which I should not have done. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. There was you writing in your book about putting on your bathing suit was such a big deal.
Yeah.
It was like a production. And you were shocked that nobody was staring at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you understand that reference, but would you just explain, like, because you're someone who's supposed to be dressed modestly and not to be seen by other people?
No, I mean, basically the only difference between, Hasidic Jews and, I guess, Shia Muslims is just the covering of the eyes. Otherwise, it's basically the same thing. You're covering up everything.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So one of the first, like my foray out into the world at 24, my first trip after getting divorced from my like very religious husband was to Aruba. And I took off like my wig and my skirt and put on a red string bikini from Victoria's Secret. And I was taught that like the minute a man saw my elbow, he would sin and it would be my fault, like, or my collarbone. And so I was like out on the beach in this bikini and I just was like terrified of getting raped or like of somebody like having an impure thought because of me. And I didn't realize like, I mean, I looked fine, but not to the extent that it would cause someone to like lose their, I was like, I had 2 babies. I was like, just like a pale. My skin had never seen sun. It wasn't like
I just haven't had the time.
He's pasty.
Yeah.
I get it. I think it was great. And I just really, really appreciate what you do and that you turned your story into helping people deal with what you had to deal with. Like, it's really very remarkable. Like, I don't know if you realize that that's not normal to escape like that. That's why there's a whole show about it.
Yeah. And in lieu of everything that's going on right now, I think the importance of these conversations is for people that can't comprehend how they can watch what's going on over there right now and think that there is a portion of the Jewish community that just not only isn't appalled by it, they actually celebrate it. And I don't think people truly understand how religion can be such a colossal mind warp in so many ways, that it can really define you in so many ways. And then when you finally decided, and again, I'm sure it didn't happen overnight. I'm sure this was a long succession of time where eventually you just snapped and you're like, that's it. I'm not pretending anymore. Like I know who I am. Yeah. And and if I have to lose family as a result of it, then they were never really family to begin with.
So did you you definitely sounds like sort of have drifted from your family, but it also sounded like your sisters had a lot of their own stuff going on too, that it wasn't necessarily just because you are not one of us anymore.
Right. My family was, so it's exactly that. Like I did get to that choice point where I was like, I just can't anymore. No one knows when that point will come. I have so many people who come to me as clients and they're like, I need to leave my marriage. I don't know how. And I'm like, you'll know when the moment comes. You'll know, you'll feel it. And that's when you'll leave. And so I got to that moment. It's not something you can plan. It's just something you need to like listen to your body with. So my family was complicated. I have a sister who passed away and we were not like the best like, we didn't have the best reputation as a family because my parents didn't really get along and we had mental illness in the family. And so my sisters and I were always scrambling to try to look normal. We always wanted to be accepted in the community and we wanted our children to be accepted. So we just were like extra careful to have the right outfit, to be extra pious, to not like be strange in any way. And when I left the community, I understood that that would create huge risk for them. They already were at a deficit because my sisters have like 10 or 8 or 6 children. They come from a family that doesn't have the best name in the community because of all the mental illness. And then to have a gay ass sister with like tattoos out in the city writing a book, like that would really, really hurt their reputations and their children's ability to find matches for marriage even more. And so like, I'm sad that I've lost my connection with them. I mourn it. I grieve. I hope one day maybe we can reconnect. I also don't blame them because I was them.
Right.
You know, so I understand that it's hard for them to engage with me.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to ask you about your sister who died is, and you wrote about this, otherwise I wouldn't be asking. So obviously you were okay to share it, but like, what really happened in terms of, yes, she did have mental illness, but then they took her kids from her, right? So and that is something that I feel like that lack of control almost is connected to where you don't have control over your own reproduction. So she did not have, and I don't know if you would talk a little bit about that, like the connection between the community, that sort of cultish community, and mental illness, and how mental illness is treated, because it didn't necessarily have to go that way.
So, yes, I think what you're talking about is this lack of respect for autonomy in that community. There is no, oh, what are you feeling like doing? How are you feeling about this marriage or, you know, this religious belief? It's like, this is what you're going to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to go to hell or be excommunicated or your children won't get into school. Like that's how that goes. You don't get asked, you know? And so for my sister, when she had multiple hospitalizations for bipolar disorder, she was very open about this and always wanted to disseminate information. She wrote beautifully about her bipolar disorder. At a point, she decided to get divorced. And my family was like, we were willing to let you keep your children through all your hospitalizations, but now that you want to get divorced, you're really, really, really irreversibly crazy. And so they had her children taken from her care and transferred from where she was living, like out of the country, back to the US and given to the care of a family member. And I saw that happen, and I knew like I was also going to be considered crazy when I got divorced, and was terrified that they would take my children too. And it's just like it's frightening what people can convince themselves is okay and normal when they're living in this controlled group where everyone's just on this same like little like mindset of like, this is normal, this is not normal. It's almost like I felt like I was like controlled in some ways to think certain ways about different people as well. Like we were all like these little drones. If someone left the community or like wore jeans or like wanted to not be religious, we were taught to think, oh, that's so sad. You know,
like how bad for them that they're not going to be able to,
to go to heaven.
Yeah.
It was even these like little things like I didn't realize until I went to social work school that in American culture, like my professor would say something about, oh, this family has children. Everyone would go, oh, that's so sweet. Like they're like human sound reactions to certain stimuli that exist in American culture that I had no awareness of. And so all of my internal reactions were different from what everybody in my class at social work school did with their face and their like bodies in reaction to like information. And so I was constantly like just shutting up and like trying to be like, what is the normal thing to do?
Right. How would you have any frame of reference?
None. Zero.
Yeah. So you've grown up fast in the past, however many years. Your book ends at what, like 2018? When?
Yeah.
something like that.
2018, yeah.
So, and it covers, it's how many years? Because you're young to me. So it's like you kind of, all the young people kind of blend.
Well, I'm 40. My kids are freshmen in college.
Okay.
My son's at Columbia. My daughter's at College of Charleston. So like, it's crazy that I have a son who is the age I was when I had him. It's
and
insane.
can you imagine if he was like wanting to be settling down and having kids now? Like,
that would be frightening. He is so mature. They're great kids. So I have been out of the community for about 8 years.
Okay.
Because I left in 2017 and the book ends in 2018. And it's been a wild 8 years, and that'll be the plot of book 2.
Do they have a relationship with their father?
They do. My children, like, they get it. They understand that he was born into a culture and that like the way he isn't his fault. And they have amazing hearts.
Good for them. Well,
yeah.
Let's end on a very unique note. Apparently, your son can speak to this. Apparently, the Jewish students are under siege at Columbia University, but I don't think.
Does your son feel terrified? Is he scared for himself?
Is he level-headed? Is he able to?
Yeah.
I think like the news stories are so, like, it's important to have reporters report on the news.
Oh, yeah.
Course, right. And they're not going to report like Jewish student walked from like mess hall A to dorm and was fine and had a great day. Like, that is just not a news story.
No.
Right. So, there's always going to be more coverage when there's a crisis. But I do think like a lot of Jewish students, from what I see, feel safe on campus. Yep. And I hope that continues to be the case. And, that the students can find some nuance in listening and speaking with one another at a point in this.
Well, they're definitely not going to learn it from the example that their older people are setting for them by firing tenured professors and arresting people for speech. And, it's like the example that these kids are getting, it's very upsetting. Yeah. And again, I feel like very maternal about it. Like, I'm very concerned. I've been saying it, like, people that are not citizens really need to be careful right now. You just do. You just need to be extra careful right now. And these kids are I feel bad for them.
Well, I think your story is a reflection of how, times are a-changing, if you will. Like, there will always be a place for religion, but the indoctrination of religion, I think, is going by way of the dodo in so many ways. Like, people, especially us millennials.
Depends on how fast they're breeding in there,
That's true, too. But, for us millennials and the Gen Zers, we just see the world in a different light. Not that Gen Xers aren't cool. They certainly have, their place. But all jokes aside,
Gen X is the coolest. You guys know it.
Yeah.
You wish you were as cool as Gen X.
Much respect for your courage to do what is necessary. And the whole point, in many ways, of writing a book like this and sharing your story is that there is another girl out there who's going through exactly what you went through. And reading this book will change her life.
Yes.
Right. I can do this. I can make that change that I need to make for my own personal sanity as well as my own personal peace. And so hopefully they will find that. And guys, links are in the description for Sarah.
You spelled her name wrong. Her name is without an H.
I spelled it right.
Without an H. Yes, he did.
I know my parents, like, they just really skimped on the H, but actually, and thank you for saying that. I do get messages every single day on social media from people who are like, I'm stuck in this community or that community, Hasidic or other religious community. I'm about to get married off. Like, your book is making me rethink whether I need to do that. And so if you want to see more of what I do and what I talk about with regard to trauma and queerness and religion, Dr. Sarah Glass on all platforms. And I think that, like, with regard to I don't really get a chance to speak politically that much, but I do really appreciate the opportunity to have a dialogue. And I think that the more we can have dialogue, just the more we can stay open to each other and, like, keep our hearts open. Like, that's the only way through this.
This happens sometimes. Don't mind us.
I don't want to talk through your
no. It does that.
Ending. So I just appreciate, like, the chance to communicate and not, like, just get into like one corner of the room or another and not have conversations that need to be had.
Well, yeah, and we are a channel, like we have people in our chat, like I am pretty left of left, like that. I just am. I've fallen off the other side, like I'm over there. But and he is getting commercial real estate awards like pro capital. But no, I mean, we have a very huge diversity of people that watch the show, everything from anarchists to conservative Trumpies to Republicans that aren't Trumpies. Like we get a whole slew because I try to approach things with reason. It's this crazy concept of just being reasonable. But do you know Catherine Bogan? Do you know Katie Bogan?
No, not yet.
Okay,
but there's a lot I don't know about the world. So like that doesn't mean
no. This is not something. This is something
Yeah.
you need to. I am. You need to look up Katie because she's been a guest on our show. She is also a trauma therapist. She's actually getting her doctorate right now. She lives in Nebraska. And she goes by Katie, the Jewish girl, and she's very pro Palestinian resistance. And she's just and her whole thing is about queer trauma. I don't know, but she's just adorable. And she was another one of those people that I just thought was really cute, invited on the show. But the two of you, I'm telling you, you got to look up Katie because you really are like you should.
Is trying to create the next therapy power couple.
I'm just saying there could be a cross-pollination. I don't know, but trauma therapists, I don't know. Jewish lesbian trauma therapists, I don't know. How big is that community?
I'm about to head to one of the biggest trauma like conferences in the country this weekend. So I can report back and see what
look and see if she's there because she does do stuff but I don't know what her niche is. But yeah, if you look for her online, you find her.
I don't want to be presumptuous, but I'm gonna guess you're either the Village or Tribeca. That's my guess.
Oh, well, I have children, so I'm on the Upper East Side.
Fair enough.
Boring, family place.
You didn't read the book. I knew she was on the Upper East Side.
But if you have like hangout spots, like the coffee shops, the artist communities that are in Tribeca and the Village in particular, I guarantee you, if you're not currently doing it, maybe you are, but if you are not like inviting some of these women, to come in from Brooklyn, we know the neighborhoods, we don't have to mention them, but I guarantee you, if they're able to sneak away and come into a community like this, and they've just been thinking about, is there anybody else out there that's like I am?
You do that, right? I mean, I mean, it's not some like covert underground railroad type of situation.
Well, I think it actually is. Like someone
I was going to say, it kind of could be, yeah.
They were like, what's the bridge from that community to where you are? And I said, I think it's a tunnel. It's not a bridge. It is like so what happens is they find me online and then message me under like fake Instagram profiles. And I just created a support space. We started it on Monday for people who are in hiding in the Orthodox community and want support.
How do they even get online? Like
so that's we had we had 1 million like security measures. They had to like go through a verification process so everyone would know that the people in the room were safe and like they didn't have to have their camera on in the room. And people like came into the group and said, I'm not safe to show my face, but I feel so alone. And here's my experience, So we're doing that.
That's amazing. It was so nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
I really appreciate what you're doing. So guys, check out Sarah's book. And if you're like me and you like to be read to, she does her own narration. So
yeah. Thank you so much.
It was so nice to meet you.
Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Great lady.
She was lovely.
And clearly
she was lovely.
Hey, listen, when you've gone through all
you and I are going to have some friggin' thermal issues.
No,
we're gonna have thermal issues. You've come in here now. You haven't been here in like months, and now you're like playing temperature commando and mouse commando, and just like being in charge of everything, like walking all in here in charge.
Well, even though this is a temporary solution to a very simple problem to solve.
Well, Peter's not a misogynist.
No, definitely not. In fact, I've said time and time again, I could die 100 times. I would come back as a man every single time. For those of you who think
sometimes oblivious and clueless, kind of like a guy, but never intentionally never misogynistic.
It's so much harder to be a woman than it is to be a man. Like you guys need to seriously get the fuck over yourselves.
Like when you say things to waitresses, and I've corrected you before, and you mean it totally harmlessly. Yes. Like when you know what I'm saying, and I'm like, yeah, you can't do that anymore.
Now, don't get me wrong. I have seen firsthand how despicable men can be around women.
Oh, he knows. No, yeah.
It's like, guy, what the, so like when people are
he's done the
why
occasional,
we-
he'll say doll.
Yeah, so when
He'll call someone doll.
you have to move that fucking mic over here.
Okay.
It's like you deliberately you talk about commando. Fuck you.
It's my studio now. You left.
When you talk about how inappropriate men can be, I mean, I've seen it, I've heard it, and they don't even think anything of it. They think it's completely normal to actually put their hands on a woman. They think it's completely normal to make lewd gestures and jokes, that there's nothing offensive about it. And it usually comes from men that really should not be making those jokes.
You know that we've talked about this before. So as a woman, I can say I can say that personally, and just in my life, I have never met an adult woman that has not been violated in some way. I haven't. I have not met a single adult woman that has not been violated in some way. And it's a spectrum. I always say it's a spectrum. It ranges from like just crass behavior and like ogly looks to, it ranges all the way up to like, being, Bill Cosby, right? Like there's a range. But yeah, women are used to being violated.
Oh, 100%.
It just is. So for people to not acknowledge that is just being really willfully ignorant.
If you like our channel, which we hope you do if you're here, you may hate watch. Maybe you don't. Maybe you actually do enjoy our channel.
Why would someone hate watch?
For our small and mighty channel, please go to patreon.com/generational change for as little as quarter of our small but mighty channel.
Mighty. And we're about to get into the political stuff. See, sometimes we do that. Like we often do it with guests, but I did not want to inundate Sarah with that because that's not her.
We did discuss politics, but in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
She identified the fact that this was an issue for Jen, and this was where she felt it was necessary to come out and say, I'm actually pro-Palestine as well.
I knew that though, because she's Hasidic, and so, or she was raised Hasidic. I knew that. But it was more about what I said, and that is important. And people, if you are a therapist, don't be going out and doing interviews on social media where you're going to say something that is going to make some of your patients feel really awkward.
But that's also a reflection that we were talking about, is that when you talk about the most rabid Zionist communities in the United States, when you're talking about New York City and South Florida, you're talking about people that truly are not only insulated, but they truly have an air of superiority about them where they don't think that the rules apply. They think that all the rules apply to everybody else, but when it is the topic of Jews and Israel, there is nothing that needs critiquing. It is what it is. Leave it alone. We are the ones who control things. And frankly, as I've often said, the biggest reason why Zionists are dealt with, because I can assure you, being in my line of work, that people really don't like them. This is all about money and power.
You're talking about Israelis.
Sure. That's exactly.
You're not talking about Zionists. You're talking about Israelis. And there is a difference. Now, I would say 99.9% of Israelis are Zionists, but there are a shit ton of Zionists that aren't Israelis. Yes. So like when you're talking about who you would do business with, you wouldn't know if somebody was a Christian Zio, but you'll know if somebody is an Israeli.
Well, as Josie points out, yeah. But remember,
there are different sects. There are different sects, but we've definitely seen a lot of the very old school Hasidic sects, and people don't realize that there's as many sects as there are.
David's right. Certainly in Manhattan, I would agree with that.
There are, and it really depends on, where you were raised, what your generation is, what your parents, experience was with Israel. Like it's a lot of it. There's
remember, especially in New York, the really rabid Zionists, they live on Long Island, they live in Westchester and Rockland County. They live in the very wealthy suburbs in South New York State and on the North Shore of Long Island. That is where a substantial amount of the very affluent and the very committed to the Israel cause people are.
But what's also interesting, so you also need to then look at the nuance of the fact that in Sarah's case, not only is she from the Hasidic community, but her dad's Israeli. Yeah. If you didn't get that part of the story. So it isn't just a matter of that she, was raised Hasidic. Her dad was Israeli and she was still raised anti-Zionist. And I think that's important. By the way, there are Hasidic Jews in Israel that are not Zionists. There's entire neighborhoods in Israel that they don't want to be in the military. They don't support the geopolitical state of Israel. And so, yeah, you can't, it's
a big shout out to Alex Mauricio Zapata. Mauricio Zapata. Thank you so much for becoming.
Zapata.
No, it's Zapata or Zapata. Zapata. I said Zapata. I should. That's true. Jen, yeah, Gringo over here trying to teach me Spanish.
That's true. Yeah.
But if you guys are here, remember any contribution obviously helps grow the channel.
No contribution is too small.
That is true. And as we mentioned, we do not have our guests locked in for Monday just yet. We are going to have Matt Taibbi the following Thursday. Woo! We are also going to have Zach Foster. We are working on getting him scheduled. Got a lot of great guests coming up. Obviously, you guys know we would very much like to have Lee Camp come back on. I know you guys have been mentioning him in the chat. He is now doing Unredacted tonight. He now has his new show. And we certainly.
But at least he's stateside. So,
yes.
Yeah. We could get Lee to come back on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's definitely one of our peeps.
Yeah.
Also,
Lee's good people.
Jen is going to have a very fun and informative interview with Kim Iverson that should drop in the next day, I want to say.
Yeah, I went on with Kim this morning. We had a really nice chat.
We will clip it and it will be on our channel as well.
And also just, she's game to come on. Like when, she'd be happy to come on.
No,
too.
absolutely.
I asked her, like, would you? Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's good conversation.
I love talking to Kim.
But that's why we like the fact that you guys are here, because you understand what our channel is all about. It is about identifying, again, you don't want me to say that phrase anymore.
No, we're about red pills and revolutions here now.
Why do you have to always criticize me when I have to make a statement? I just don't get it. It's like they have to do it.
We were talking earlier about Seinfeld, and I don't remember if he ever signed an IDF bomb, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if he did. It would certainly be within his purview to do that. And since we're talking about Zionism.
Okay, let's get into the good stuff. We got to get into the shit tonight,
Colin,
guys.
Please pull up that tweet that I sent you of Thomas Massie and
the Donald,
because I think it's very important for people to understand.
Donald Trump decides to pick a fight with one of the most popular people in Congress.
Maybe the most popular.
Yeah.
But here's all you need to know. You had it, Colin. You had it.
Stop yelling at Colin.
Okay, no, you almost had it. One more time. There it is. So when you think about, thank you, Z, welcome aboard. So this is what matters.
Z, go back and watch the interview at some point that we just had with Dr. Glass.
For those of you who've been following the show, both of us, but me in particular, are huge supporters of Thomas Massie. Not because I agree with everything that he stands for politically, but what does matter when it comes to Thomas Massie is that he's not bought by corporate special interests. And he also has not only told Trump to go fuck himself.
Oh, I love that so much.
But he's also told AIPAC to go fuck themselves.
I love that too.
And here's the proof.
This makes me so happy.
So this is what matters.
This makes me so
Red
happy.
Pill USA. Trump is compromised big time. Thomas Massie is not. If you don't understand that yet, you are, well.
We're not going to say that. You're obviously not reading the tea leaves.
Okay. So this is really what matters. This right here is what matters. So when you think about
good luck with that, Donnie.
So why did Trump attack Thomas Massie? Because Trump is a 100% transactional businessman. You give me money and it will benefit me and my family and friends, or cronies, whatever you want to call them, then I will do for you. And so one of the conditions upon him taking $100 million from Miriam Adelson, among other groups within the Israel lobby, such as AIPAC.
Up to, what is that, $230,473,622.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know what that buys you? Buys you the West Bank. Because Miriam Adelson bought the West Bank.
Oh, 100%.
So that's what that buys you.
I totally remember talking about Golan Heights. They tried to get it for so many years. And then Mr. Adelson came to me and said, could you get me Golan Heights? I said, I totally can. And I got it in. It took him 75 years. I did it in 15 minutes.
Our resident Kentuckian, Zainab, makes me stand correct. Good luck to him in primarying Thomas Massie. Good luck to you there with that, Donnie.
Thomas Massie,
hilarious.
Very proudly by our friends at Track AIPAC, has never taken a dollar from the Israel lobby.
He doesn't take money from any lobby.
Mm-hmm. When they did this, when Track AIPAC started presenting the representatives of this country, that do not take money from AIPAC, the first two people that they showed was Thomas Massie and Ilhan Omar. Talk about people that are very juxtaposed in their politics. But you know what? Because they're not bought and paid for by corporate special interests, they probably do get along on the Hill. They have their conversations, they may have their disagreements, but at the end of the day, they are not disagreeing with each other because some corporate overlord is telling them to not agree on something. Donald Trump, because he is in power, is exposing the entire rot of the system for all of its glory that could never have been done with anybody else. That's what defines him. And that will be his legacy. And you know what? It's actually not a bad legacy to have.
It's like, this is not, Mr. President, this isn't the person you want to pick a fight with.
Big mistake.
It's just not. It's a really bad look. There are so many other people worth fighting with than someone that people, quite honestly, on both sides of the aisle really respect and like.
Colin, could you please pull up Trump's tweet or his what was it? His Truth Social about Mr. Massie?
Yeah.
Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allowed millions of criminals to invade our nation. Sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Congressman Thomas Massie of beautiful Kentucky is an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He should be primaried, and I will lead the charge against him. He's just another grandstander who's too much trouble and not worth the fight. He reminds me of Liz Cheney, which keep in mind, Donnie, you actually spelled Cheney wrong. Great job on that one. Before her historic record-breaking fall.
He does it on purpose to be disrespectful.
The people of Kentucky won't stand for it.
Yes, and he's and you're very in touch with the people of Kentucky.
Kentucky, beautiful state, great state. First state I won when I ran for president. Do I have any takers? Anyway, thank you for the House Freedom Caucus for your very important vote. We need to buy some time in order to make America great again.
Again.
Greater than ever before. Unite and win.
So, okay, so now show Massie's response, because to me, that's the best. Okay, so Trump being Trump.
In less than 3 days, I've received $261,000 through 3,203 individual donations without sending an email, a text, or a phone call. It's called Fundraising Record for Me.
It's a fundraising record for me.
It's a fundraising record for me, and it's boosted my current cash on hand north of $1.1 million.
So that's him like flexing a little bit there.
Thomas Massie.
Look at him and you know, rocking the facial hair and the silver fox thing going on. He's getting prime.
Massie has emerged from the unfortunate passing of his late wife and has basically become almost like a Heisenberg type of guy. He's like, you're fucking with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Like, I actually know how to survive in the wild, Donnie. And he would say this, he says this to all the libs. So why not say it to Trump? Why not say it to all of them? He is the genuine article if there ever was one.
He has zero fucks to give.
So when the crypt keeper finally
honestly,
leaves,
you know what?
Thomas Massie's running for the U.S. Senate.
And then we'd have, isn't it amazing that you would then have the only state that has both senators not on the payroll would be Kentucky?
Yeah. What's even more amazing is that Rand Paul would take such a step backwards compared to Massie. Massie's he's the best we got. And that's why supporting him is critical. And that's why, much like we would want to see better representation in Congress, and again, it alludes to the problem with somebody like Bernie or even somebody like Alex. Massie stands on principle, full stop. He has repeatedly told Trump to go kick rocks. Alex and Bernie never step out of line.
Well, Democrats don't step out of line. The other thing that he had pointed out was he called out what Trump was saying is obviously not true about how he's voted on resolutions. Thomas Massie has been incredibly consistent.
I think what you have to remember, Z, is that while Massie is a true
that is a problem.
economic libertarian,
This is a problem for me.
it's not that he doesn't want people to have a safety net. It's that he doesn't believe that the government should be handling that, because we actually live in a country today where the government is so bought off by corporate special interests that it actually is more financially beneficial for people to collect money from the government than it is to work a job, because the corporations won't pay a living wage. So if his argument is,
does he support living wage rules?
that's what we need to know.
And
so if
well,
Massie,
Dana probably knows.
but this is where the game will change. See, if Massie does run for the U.S. Senate, then the conversation completely changes in terms of what is your economic philosophy, because it's a lot different when you have not only 100 votes versus 435, but it's very possible that you want to talk about a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. I mean, it's the ultimate power chamber in the entire world. There is no more powerful elected body of government in the world than the U.S. Senate. So,
okay, see, he doesn't support living wage. So these are not good policies. Look, again, and we've said it a million times, our liking him has nothing to do with policy. It just has to do with that he's not bought and paid for. And at the end of the day, when you're not bought and paid for, if you're not serving your people, they'll vote you out.
Yeah.
If they don't like you, they'll vote you out. If you're not bought and paid for, then you have to stand on your merit, and you have to stand, your people have to like you. So it really isn't for me to say what I like or don't like about someone if he's representing his people. Austerity is violence. I don't agree with that. I do agree with having social safety net and collective resources in that way. So no, I don't agree with that. I'd also argue that I don't get to vote in that race because I don't live in Kentucky.
Carl's, guess what? Some people are right-wing. That's just the way it is. But he's not a religious psychopath. In fact, one of the most impressive things about Thomas Massie is that he is the most green representative in the country. He basically lives off the grid. He built his entire property, and he also lives off of his entire energy that he gets is from solar.
I have no, look, I don't mind, look, I am obviously the opposite of conservative, but the whole premise of having a democratic republic is that different communities have their will represented. So if you're representing conservative place with conservative people, then yes, you ought to be voting in a conservative manner for your people. That's your job.
Well, that's
so
what,
I don't have, this is not a policy. This has to do with people who are or are not representing constituents as opposed to donors. That's all I'm talking about.
And David, it's a double-edged sword, because I don't ever hear him talk about
these
two particulars, in which it does matter. But the difference with somebody like Massie is that Massie is willing to cut the Pentagon. And that's something that nobody else.
Exactly. So
no one else is going to go there. And so that's where you have compromise. That's the thing about the political system we live in today.
When you're not bought, you can compromise.
That's something that used to happen many, many moons ago. But that doesn't happen now, because we're beyond the reach of what would be considered normal political discourse. It doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Somebody like Thomas Massie would fit in perfectly. I mean, I don't want to compare him necessarily to Calvin Coolidge, but there's really something to be said for a guy that's just not corrupt. Like, that matters a lot. For me, it does anyway. So I don't really care what somebody may think of what a person is projecting in terms of their politics. I care about actions.
Well, right. And here's the other thing. When you're not bought and paid for, that means that you're going to be capable of having a reasonable discussion.
Thank you, Yellow Bite, for the $1.99. And I agree. He's a states' rights guy. Right. That's his thing.
So the point I'm making is I don't have to agree with him on policy if he's properly representing his constituents. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if he's somebody that's speaking out against our social safety net, then I'm going to fight against that. Absolutely. And I will stand against that, and I will speak out against that, and I would be willing to argue about that. However, when you have someone who's not a corporate whore, it's what Peter is saying is you tend to end up with a compromise, because these are people that can be reasoned with, because they recognize, and they're also not necessarily tyrannical in thinking that everybody should want things the way they do. Mm-hmm. And if you're not bought, that means that you are more reasonable.
Thomas Massie is the type of person where if you told him, look, you want to cut a portion of the social safety net, we need you to advocate for a living wage. And Massie would be the type of person who would say, all right, here's what I'll advocate for. I'm not going to advocate for a living wage, but I will advocate for tuition-free trade schools. I will put my reputation on the line, and I will fight for that.
It's negotiating.
So, yeah, and he'll do that. That's his way. And that's why Massie said, we agreed to a 1% cut in spending. We have excess spending in this government, and there is no denying that we do. I think everybody can admit that we have a completely bloated government structure.
But you have to start with the Pentagon. And if you don't start with the Pentagon, you're wasting all of our time.
And we will conclude this segment on this note, and why I think it's so vital, and why I do believe Massie's going to run for the Senate. And yes, I will support him, and I believe Jen will as well.
I will.
AIPAC has come out and has already made very clear that if Massie gets in this race, there is no amount of money that they will not spend to stop him from winning. The beautiful thing about it is, who is actually going to run for the U.S. Senate in Kentucky other than Thomas Massie? The only possible option outside of Massie that could compete with him would be Governor Andy Beshear. Now, if that were to happen, that would be a very interesting race, and we would be seeing clear as day, would the Democrat swear off Israel lobby money? And you know what? I'm not sure they would.
I don't think they can. I think that ship sailed.
I think Massie, if he ran for the Senate in Kentucky, he would have thousands of volunteers. And the beautiful thing about Kentucky is that it's a very accessible state. There are so many different entry points. People from Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Tennessee. People they will come in. They will come into Lexington. They will come in to Louisville. They will go all throughout the state, and they will make it a point to get him in there.
Well, what's so interesting is that, and again, I disagree with him on probably, like, I'd say a good 80% of policy. I'd say, like,
good.
At least. And yet the fact that AIPAC did that and threw down a gauntlet like that, that's like putting a piece of raw meat in front of a dog to me. Like, now AIPAC is saying they're going to fight to keep him out. Well, I am now going to fight to get him in.
I agree.
That is it. It doesn't even matter to me, honestly. But if AIPAC hates him, he's my guy.
So let's flip it around onto the other side, because those of you who obviously are in the game like we are, you obviously heard about the interview that Briahna Joy Gray did with former Congressman Jamaal Bowman, and slate mate of Jen's from 2020.
I have no beef with Jamaal.
No.
Jamaal was nice to me. Although he totally ignored us in terms of coming on the show, right? Like, he never even responded or anything, right?
Corey should have come on, but that's a whole other story.
That's another story.
Bottom line is this. When you think about why the left never gets anywhere, and I'm not talking about the crabby left, the overwoke left, I'm talking about the real economic labor left. The reason you get nowhere is because people get too caught up in their feelings. And this is a huge part of the problem. And even a former congressman gets caught up in this crap.
My feelings.
So we are going to play, Colin, which one is about Jimmy?
One says one and one says two.
Yeah,
so he probably put him in order.
Yeah, I just did them in the order you sent. So the first one you sent.
Colin, for just using common sense. 1 and 2.
Thank you. Okay, so this is what Mr. Bowman had to say about things like force the vote.
Say anything out of pocket. So if you can point to something that I said that was out of pocket, we can discuss it. But I was not bombastic. I was incredibly measured. I constantly tried to call people in. I stood in solidarity with other very measured voices like Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske and Chris Hedges and Cornel West. And all of us were roundly ignored.
Yeah.
Were ignored. And I thought it was frankly very disrespectful.
Maybe Jimmy messed it up for everybody. Maybe Jimmy messed it up.
So you want to effectively throw Jimmy under the bus because you don't like him, even though he had the right idea about a critical issue that could have changed the narrative about healthcare in the United States. And it would have, because it would have forced the Democratic Party's hand. And they did have the votes to make that impact. If the people pretend that they couldn't have done anything, trust me when I tell you, they would have caused total anarchy within the Democratic Party if they had held up their 6 votes. And none of them were willing to do it because for them, it's all about a fucking career.
Did you ever watch Arrested Development?
No.
Oh, okay. You don't know the chicken dance?
No, but I know. No, but I know about
chicken dance.
But I love Jeffrey Tambor. He's funny.
Okay, so anybody's watched Arrested Development, like I'm like trying to channel Will Arnett's chicken dance. But anyway.
What I find even more interesting is how now that Jamal's out of Congress, he's willing to say Jimmy Dore's name when it's like, okay, they pretend like any of these content creators don't exist when they're in power. Never go on their shows, never acknowledge them. But now that it's after the fact, it's all this whole Jimmy's an asshole. I'm like, okay, Jimmy is an asshole. Who gives a fuck? Was he right about the issue or not? That's what matters to me. That's what matters to Jen, and that's what should matter to anybody who cares about forwarding the movement.
I'm happy to say that we've been now doing this for how many years? Like 4.5 years. It's been a long time. Yeah. That if you go back to the episodes around the time of the Force the Vote, we stand correct on that issue.
Oh, 100%.
We were exactly where we are right now, which is Jimmy is an asshole, but yet this is the way to go.
And do you remember how many people gave a shit?
Yeah.
It's
gotta be both things are true. Jimmy can be an asshole, and yet he could be correct on an issue.
We'll continue.
This is what I want to get to, because you said this to me in our call, and I have to admit, it was frustrating to me. I'm not going to let someone who I personally disagree with get in the way of a good idea. And I do think that it is incumbent on those with more power and influence and platform and just like emotional maturity to use that to advance our collective ends. Do I think personally that every single thing that Jimmy Dore has argued or stood behind or the tone he's used is what I would choose to do in my life? Absolutely not. But I was keen enough to see him as an ally in a moment on a specific issue where he had the biggest platform of all of us because nobody with a bigger platform like yourself would get involved. And so to the constant effort to divide and conquer and make us fight within ourselves, I refuse. I'm going to continue to call people in. I am. And I would have liked to have seen that approach from the squad, especially people like Justin Jackson. There was so many good faith, respectful, and
we love Justin Jackson. I wish he could have. I remember when he had this big breakaway run in against the Saints when he was
came
on
like shortly after that.
It was almost like because he didn't score that touchdown, it's like he's not going to last long in the league. And I knew he wouldn't. And he was there for like 3 years, but I was so glad that he had some moments.
He was a cutie poo.
And he was so adamant about we have these platforms. But the thing that I always appreciated about Justin was that he said most of the guys that play football, they're either progressive like me or they're all Trump. Like there's not this like liberal spectrum within these guys.
Because think about, again, how you're always classifying like the liberal Democratic males. Those aren't people that are playing football.
Correct. That's fair.
I literally wrote it down in an article so no one would even have to hear a voice involved. Just the plan, straight facts, no chaser.
Yeah.
And so still there was a refusal to engage with the idea.
And you could see that Jamal is obfuscating 100%.
Well, his body language is also extremely condescending. And I don't like it at all. Like he's sitting there like he's got somewhere better to be. And he's giving her a few minutes of his time when in fact, good for her, and I'm not necessarily, I don't watch her show, but I do appreciate that she called him out.
Teresa, thank you so much for the 10
You're
bucks.
going to need to show part 2 because we need to see his response. I feel like we're making it very one-sided.
No,
we need to see his glorious response.
Well, it's not a glorious response.
Exactly.
It's actually, I believe it's a continuation. So let's play it.
Yeah, I need to see
that. The squad is a net positive for the left.
It's an interesting question because history is only written when the dust is settled and all of that. Like I said, I think
there's yes or no.
Without the squad, it's not a yes or no answer. I think without the squad, I would not personally have the confidence to have so little confidence in the Democratic Party that I have now, right? Like we needed the squad to exist. We needed the experiment to run to see whether or not you could have an insurgent left within the party.
And now we know you can't.
To come to a conclusion about whether that plan could be successful. So I do think, we needed it to happen.
Yeah, that's not an answer. That's not an answer at all. So
the answer is that you're a failed experiment. That's the answer, is that the squad was a failed experiment. And now we know that doesn't work. And it's time to move on to plan B.
The great thing about this interview, and credit Brie for getting him, keep in mind, guys, Jamaal Bowman is just waiting in the wings because he has from my understanding, intention of primarying Richie Torres in the next election.
And
cycle.
it'll be very difficult. And that's a weird position for me to be in, because I can't think of anybody I dislike in Congress personally more than Richie Torres. But I also don't want to particularly help this man get back in either.
That's the other thing. It's one thing if the way you're looking at it is from the perspective of, I don't want to work with somebody who looks down on me. Jimmy Dore may be a colossal asshole, but he doesn't look down on people. This guy is looking down on Bree and anybody who disagrees that it's an inside game. You have to make relationships and do this.
You know who says that? People who want to stay in there for a career. That's who says that.
That is why if Jamaal runs, because this interview will be replayed for a lot of people who may have been on the fence about whether or not they were going to get up to primary. And listen, getting up to primary Richie Torres is like primarying Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It's not hard to get excited to get somebody like that out. But if the person who's trying to do it is just proving that while it may not be as offensive as Richie Torres, it's still the same bullshit and it's not going to accomplish anything.
More importantly, it's definitely not inspired. I'm not inspired to no. And I am someone who very specifically dislikes Richie Torres.
And
I still don't feel motivated.
And you would think somebody like this who had every single bullet in the chamber fired at him by AIPAC, that he would have like some type of reflection about where did I mess up so badly that they made it their point to get me out with $25 million, which set a record for a congressional race. Instead, he's acting like, you see, I'm really good. They needed to do all that to get me out, and they're going to have to keep it. No.
But you know what, though? In a sense, though, that aligns him with Democrats completely. Lack of self-awareness, complete lack of self-awareness.
Robert Escobar, great point. He has no sense of urgency.
No, he's sitting there like, yeah, whatever. And he thinks
maybe he's got his pension already.
But I'll tell you what that is it's hubris at a level that will not serve, and it sure as hell won't serve to unseat Richie Torres.
And on top of everything else, talk about not reading the friggin' moment. My goodness, let's finish it up.
Why not? Why is that?
It's not an answer. You're saying, yeah, we need a squad to know that insurgent campaigns don't work.
Yes.
That's not a yes or no answer. It's a net positive. You can't know
until you know.
So I guess the answer.
If it had worked, it would have been great too, right?
I guess you would say it's a net positive because now you got information that you wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
But at the end of the day, he came off to me very entitled in that interview. Bitter and entitled. And that is not going to translate well as enough of a reason to put him back in that seat, in a congressional seat.
And guys, listen, it's not an unheralded thing. This is a very common, what I would consider to be practice amongst a lot of people who want power. I mean, she's a nice lady, but Annette Taddeo has run for office like 10 times.
Oh, there's certain people. I mean, look,
Charlie Crist. Granted, Charlie Crist was the governor of the state.
We know people around the state, like I'm not going to say his name, but that guy, the guy, who I'm talking about. It's amazing, but you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. So there's certain people that they just like to run. They just do.
That's just the thing.
And then there's people, and I'm not going to mention names. You're going to mention names. That it's almost like they're okay. You know how like on certain TV shows, there's certain actors that you just see sort of over and over and over again, that they just kind of cross over shows. They're always, especially on shows like Law and Order, you just certain actors that you see in all the shows. There's local politicians that are like that. They're just always showing up at different things. It's just what they do. And the party will use them in different capacities. So, we need somebody in this seat. They'll run them in that seat. They're just like not extras. I wouldn't say extras, like, like ancillary Law and Order characters. They're just brought in when needed.
One thing that we look at when we see the collapse, yes, Z, that's exactly, that's what we said. Yeah, he is, but that's also why I think he's gonna try to run against Richie Torres.
Exactly, character actors. That's what we're talking about. There are people that do that part here.
And very much like Alex, they will use these channels until they don't need to use them anymore. And then they'll just use the corporate channels because it's about a career. If it was about the mission and the message, then people like Alex and all of them. I mean, listen, You know, Ilhan, I understand. She's just somebody who keeps a very, very low profile. That's just how she operates. But I saw her with Jen. She's real.
She's very real.
There's a lot of people who are not. And Jamaal strikes me as somebody who isn't.
I don't know. I mean, we only met him for a few minutes.
I know what he said there.
Oh, okay.
And you know what? It's always more telling what you say when the chips are down. If you don't have a moment's reflection of, wow, I really did this the wrong way.
Right.
Instead, he's saying, what are you talking about? We're right. You don't know.
Positive.
Net
We're
positive.
net positive.
What net positive? What has changed? In fact, it's gotten so much worse.
Well, he's saying that just the fact that now we know that was a failed experiment and net positive. So then if we're willing to accept that, why in the world would we put you back in?
That's a great point.
So it's like the fact that you make that be like, that's a net positive. But I mean, I think that, you know, if he came off or was, let's say if he was somebody that you could tell was passionate and was really wanting to fix things and said, okay, this is what we need to do. I was in there. I can tell you we need to do X, Y. And by the way, from being in there, you should have a friggin' plan. You should be telling me what your plan is to go back in that you need to do differently, that you could do better this time. And you need to sound a whole hell of a lot more inspired and interested in serving than like you're sitting there and doing Brie a favor for just answering her questions.
Think about how many times Jamaal would put posts out there making fun of Republicans. Oh, look, Republicans are fighting. Look, us Democrats, we're all having a great time. That's the type of stuff where if you care about legislating, then you would never have the time to do stuff like that. That's why Thomas Massie is who he is. That's why Ilhan Omar is who she is. Because they're two of the top, most effective legislators on Capitol Hill.
In terms of actually getting legislation through.
Correct.
And getting things done.
They prioritize things. Whereas Jamaal is prioritizing a career, which, let me tell you, when you come from being a high school principal in a rough area in New York City, and now you're thrust into the position of being a congressional legislator for 4 years, it's a completely different perspective on the world. And the second it gets taken away from you, it's this, why do I got to deal with you people now? That is a reflection of being affected by that world. And that is why Alex
he comes
acts
off
the way
that
she
way.
does.
Yeah.
Yes.
She
absolutely.
does too. It's so not a good look.
Yeah. It is unfortunate. But all that being said,
we have other important things to talk about.
The empire is collapsing.
The empire is collapsing.
And so when it's so obvious and in your face, you can't help but laugh at it because
the empire's collapsing. I'm expressing fake outrage.
I don't know what Trump was hoping to accomplish by supposedly boosting Tesla, but what it does point out is how badly things must be going internally for Musk right now. That's why Trump had to do this.
All these cars won incredible awards. So they're great cars and they're American made. And I think, try
American made with the labor you abuse. He is Tesla is horrible to their workers.
When you talk about a net positive, and we could have our disagreements.
And they don't unionize, I'm
sure.
sorry.
Yeah, you could have your disagreements with Sean Fain, as we've done on multiple occasions. But overall, Sean Fain is a net positive as far as I'm concerned. He was able to successfully get his union a true living wage of $74,000 a year for his automakers, for the auto unions, Daimler, Ford, and GM. They were able to get a new union contract that doubled the salary of the average Tesla worker, which is $37,000 a year. That's a slave wage for a auto manufacturer. And on top of that,
whose head is making what he's making.
How do you think you become as rich as you do? You have to exploit people in order to do it. And boy, does he ever. And then when Fain was able to get that union contract passed for the, not the NLRB, the United Auto Workers Union, you immediately had Trump go on stage at a rally and bash Fain and talk about how great Musk is. It's totally transactional. There is nothing to their relationship other than money and power.
Okay,
nothing.
Guys, where are we on the breakup-ometer? Who's going to break up first? Is it going to be Taylor and Travis or Trump and Elon? You guys, I think it'll be Trump and Musk, but you never know now that the Chiefs are kind of out of the spotlight and her tour is over, and I don't know. Things can happen. So
we'll continue.
And I should say, beyond the cars, they're great. But we have to celebrate somebody that has the courage to do this. He could have said, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to get involved. Let the country go to hell. He didn't want to do that. And remember, he's going to find, and we're up to almost $500 billion worth of waste and fraud. And it's 500 billion. We're giving $2 billion here, $2 billion, and not millions. It was a bet. If it was $1 million or $2 million, that's a lot of money. But we're talking about big.
You gotta be kidding me.
Did you see the thing where somebody went into I guess it was a dealership that had a ton of the trucks and they graffitied all over the truck?
Briahna with the comment of the evening, the car for the reboot of Back to the Future.
Now, let me explain to you. To me, the Tesla truck, the Cybertruck, looks like if the DeLorean and a dumpster merged together. That's what that looks like to
now
me.
You can't unsee it. But at least it's
true,
not
and that's why apparently some people have been finding Trash Panda paw prints on the back because the Trash Pandas think that it's a dumpster.
That's funny.
Millions of dollars being given to defunct, scams. Given to people with nothing. They have nothing going. They open up a subchapter S corporation, and they put $2 billion into it from nowhere. I'll watch Secret Service go crazy. Thank you.
I mean, I actually drove around. It would really be wild.
Wow.
So here's the thing, guys. If you're not aware that these things are a complete fire hazard.
This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. That's beautiful. Wow.
Yep, Taylor and Travis. Interesting.
To be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company. I've stuck up for the.
Okay. We need to be more like the French. You guys see what the French did to Tesla over there? What they did to the little Tesla dealer or whatever? They set that shit on fire.
Well, and not only that, but you're drawing more attention to it. What do you think is going to happen? They're doing a really bad thing to a great American company. A great American company.
Oh, my God.
For shareholders, yes. For workers, for the average American.
And horrible. And by the way, how infuriating it must be. Like, I don't understand how Trump supporters, your MAGA people who I think are very America first in their mindset, how in the world are they stomaching that a guy who's not from here and wasn't elected is going through our pocketbook and picking and choosing what he likes, what works for him. And he's, of course, keeping all the things that feed his subsidies and feed his corporate interests. So how much of the America First people liking that a guy who's not from here, that's our immigration problem. Our biggest immigration problem is like Elon Musk.
Colin, if you will, why is Trump doing this? Why would Trump feel the need to give a huge boost to Elon and say that I just bought myself a Tesla?
Why?
Why would he do that, Colin? What would be the motivation
Why does it sound so
of
rhetorical?
President Trump to have to do this on his behalf? I think we know why. Do you have the tweet?
Is that not it right there?
I'm not sure. I sent it to you, Colin.
Do you know how many people send things to Colin in a day?
I'll send it again if you need me to.
Just don't pick on Colin.
I'm not picking on it.
So
yeah, I might be missing it. I'm double checking right now.
I'll resend it right now.
So I hope, and here's the thing. So Trump actually, I mean, I know that's in DC where he is now, but let's have him move that Tesla and keep it down at Mar-a-Lago and see what happens when the
I am
salt water
nice.
comes in. And honestly, and I really do believe this, as much as our insurance is a shit show down here in Florida, like beyond, if you own a Tesla, you should have to pay higher homeowners or renters premiums. You should have to pay for that because your car is creating even more of a hazard than we have from flooding. Because now your car, when it explodes in its carport and whatever condo you live in, could potentially set your whole neighborhood on fire in addition to flood damage.
Well, this is why Trump is doing this. Tesla stock is plummeting.
Woo!
And the fact that today it lost 15% of its shares.
Woo-hoo.
Our friends over at Due Dissonance, Keaton and Russell, brought up a very good point, and why this free fall from grace for Tesla and Elon Musk is going to continue. Because remember,
because he's a douche canoe.
This entire relationship is transactional. Elon Musk is really a liberal. This is a guy whose almost entire model of his car is being sold to wealthy liberal suburbanites. That's who it appeals to. And now that they hate him, there's a reason why they're now just saying, all right, well, I don't want a Tesla anymore. And now the market has changed.
Now he pissed off the liberals in the suburbs, and those are the people buying his cars. Douche canoe.
Oh, I like that, Kat. I like that. 84 viewers and 84 likes. We love it. And so therein lies the rub. He has pissed off his base, if you will, of people that traditionally buy Teslas.
I will say that a woman that I'm friendly with that I was speaking to was saying that she was so glad that she got dumped his stock a few weeks ago. Like she dumped it a few weeks ago.
That's also something to keep in mind. Like there's very wealthy people that invest in Tesla and they're just going to sell the stock off because of their feelings. You know what?
Can we be clear that really only for the most part, people that are invested in individual type stocks are fairly affluent.
Absolutely. But that's also the same type of person that traditionally.
Oh, just hit the start cam. This is a new thing that happens.
It's a new problem.
I think it has to do with like the vibe in the room.
Well, I've been saying for the longest time that the richest billionaire, the fact that we even have to measure it that way, but nevertheless, the richest billionaire for me is still Warren Buffett, because almost a substantial portion of his money is tied up in real estate.
Well, then you have to look at Gates. Then you have to look at
Bill
Gates owns so much real estate.
And Bill Gates, of course, is the most tyrannical billionaire.
He's horrifying.
He has real power, and he sees himself as a person who's meant to play God. And that's why he's dangerous.
I would love to get Z, do you have any connection to Vandana Shiva? I would love to have her on the show, and I would do it at any time of day. I would do it at any time of day. Whatever India standard time is, or I think she might be in the UK.
But think of it this way. I mean, it depends on whose, ticker stock portfolio you're looking at. I mean, there is a suggestion that Musk has lost possibly half his wealth. But remember.
But he's sitting there now getting it back from our purse.
Defense contractors and the purse.
He's in our wallet, and he's just sitting there digging around in our wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not even from here. That kind of annoys the shit out of me. And I'm like, so not like a nationalistic person, but I find it irritating.
Well, I don't know if I've been following it that closely, Miranda, but I will say that the way Elon treats that child is the same way he treats all of them.
It's a prop.
He's got, what does he have? 13 now?
15. And here's the thing.
Test tube.
There's something very weird about that. There is something very weird. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily sinister, but there is something very off and very weird about him with these women. It's like they're basically like incubators. And I don't even know that like it's all very strange. Well, there's something very weird about
I think from his perspective, he just sizes them up and determines whether or not they're going to be attractive in his eyes. Like I think he wants pretty kids.
But I just can't fathom that these women are having sex with him. That's why I think it's test tubes.
I think you might be right. It's not, listen.
He's paying them and getting their eggs and shit. And that's what I mean. I don't know that it's sinister, but it's something very weird.
I can assure you guys, the higher up the ladder you go, the more absolutely insane and deranged people tend to become.
That's like when, and a lot of it though, to me, where a lot of the conspiracy theorists get way too far on some of the stuff that I think, well, you're taking that, like I'm not with Jewish space lasers and shit like that. But when you get up into certain levels of oligarchic wealth, where you can do whatever you want without consequence for a really long time, actually get away with it. A lot of them forever, because you only know about the ones that get caught. So that means for every rat you see, there's 50 you don't. But the point is, when you can have anything you want at any minute you want, that's a thing. Oh, okay. So
not surprised.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Surprised.
And I just,
Jen is very prophetic about a lot of stuff.
I am.
You'd be surprised.
I had no idea. But yeah, there's something very off about that. He's very Android to me. I don't want to compare him to Data, because I really love Data from Next Generation. But he comes off very, and I know that people say, well, he's on the spectrum and da-da-da. He's also an asshole.
That is for sure.
So I understand he very well could be on the spectrum. He can also be an asshole.
Last story of the evening.
Ooh.
And it kind of just dawned on me.
Which one are we doing? What are you doing?
When I think of Mahmoud Khalil,
I
actually fancy him as the next Luigi Mangione. There's actually a lot of similarities between the two. Now Mahmoud is becoming a symbol for the resistance against the Zionist state.
I thought you meant like he turns into where he goes and kills somebody, because I don't see that at all. You mean as a symbol?
As a symbol,
correct.
100%.
Okay. Not he does what Luigi mentioned. Okay.
This is just another version of it. They, much like with Luigi, and it can't be lost on people that both stories happened in New York City. But what should be recognized is that much like they bit off more than they can chew with Mangione regarding protecting this falsehood that is pro or for-profit health, as we have in the United States, the same is true with protecting the Zionist state. The similarity between Luigi and Mahmoud, and also between for-profit health and the Zionist state, it's all about money and power.
Can I talk about how angry I am about the Mahmoud thing?
I'm sure.
I can't even begin to express the amount of rage. And I'm gonna give a little anecdote. So I grew up knowing, like, when I was pretty young, that I wanted to be in journalism school. I knew I wanted to go to journalism school. I was on school newspaper. I was very active in that. And 2 years in a row, our school newspaper was selected to go to what is Columbia Scholastic Press Association, CSPA, which happens at Columbia University. And as journalism students,
go for it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. So can you not do that?
I'm sorry.
Please. I know, but can you not? Okay. So 2 years in a row, my group from high school would go to Columbia and participate in this award thing that we got to take journalism courses and meet like the journalism professors. And it was just this whole journalism thing at Columbia, which is the school that would judge all high school journalists, whether it's high school newspapers and high school yearbooks do this. It's one of the hugest, most prestigious competitions. And going there and taking classes there, it was meaningful. And now I feel like it's garbage. And I am so disgusted with the fact that not just that it's Columbia, it could be any university, that any university would do this, but the fact that it is Columbia, and that this is a school that is particularly prestigious in the field of journalism. And this is how I felt when at my alma mater at Northwestern, when they fired Stephen Thrasher, the journalism professor. This is infuriating to me. Like, this makes me want to like set my degree on fire. Okay. Now, with Columbia, the fact that I felt like, I could not believe how honored it was that we got invited to go to this thing. Trash. You're trash. The fact that the journalism schools are allowing this level of like ridiculous tyranny on their campuses and not protecting their students is an outrage that they will never live down. They will never live down this legacy of silencing speech as a university and silencing free thought and discussion, which is the complete antithesis of what their job is. Their two jobs, their only two jobs, are to educate students and protect them. You do neither. You suck ass. So I am so outraged about the whole thing with this kid. And I know he's not a kid, but and everybody is sitting there and focusing on his citizenship status and mentioning, and his wife's a citizen and she's pregnant. That's all fucking irrelevant. I don't care what his citizenship status is. This is ridiculous.
And on top of everything else, beyond any doubt, that the whole issue regarding his citizenship is a complete falsehood. He has a green card and he's married to an American citizen.
Oh, he absolutely has a green card. And which is what I'm saying. People who do not have citizenship status need to be extra careful right now. And it sickens me that we're in this position. But I don't care whether you're a citizen. I don't care if you are here undocumented. And I'm not going to say illegal about people because that's disgusting. But let's say here's the thing people don't understand. I don't have my Constitution. I have lost my Constitution.
It's somewhere buried in the piles here, Jen. It's somewhere.
So let me explain to people about the First Amendment. The First Amendment does not apply just to citizens. The First Amendment has absolutely nothing to do with citizenship. Nothing. The First Amendment applies to people. people that are here, documented, undocumented, red, black, white, purple, green, all people here, has nothing to do with citizenship status. The 14th Amendment, which is voting and equal protection, that applies to citizens. So if you're a citizen, you get to vote. Yay, you. The First Amendment applies to everyone. Everyone. People coming across the border, people in detention, people that we don't know what they are, all get First Amendment rights. This is infuriating to me. Sorry. And I don't even have my Constitution because I would read it aloud.
Give a shout out to possibly Jen's favorite fellow Jew, Medea Benjamin, and Code Pink, Jews for Peace. The protests in New York have reached a boiling point. The arrests are out en masse, but this is not going to end well at all. So here's some footage.
That's JVP. That's Jewish voice for peace. That's my peace. Get it. They have to figure out a way to come out of this and And yet we're supposed to believe that the Jews on Columbia feel unsafe.
Palestine will be free. From the sea to the river.
I see somebody asking how they got into Trump Tower. The same way they get into all these places like the Capitol Rotunda. When they walk in, they're dressed all like different people. When they walk into, they take off, they all have clothes that they end up dropping. When they go into one of these, I think when they go into these places, they're all dressed completely different. And then when a certain time happens, they all take off their shirts, they're dressed the same, and they start whatever action that they're going to do. So that's how they get into those places. But yeah, I mean, all of these things is just going to be in this vicious circle with the increased security state and the increased cop cities and the increased crackdowns. And we just have to keep doing it. And people that are citizens need to put themselves in front of people that aren't. And that's just how it's going to have to be.
And this is also, yes, well, of course. And they're all the same. They're all the same. They're these extremely... The other thing about Upper East Side Jews that a lot of people don't know is that they're actually not that flashy. Like you wouldn't know necessarily that they were loaded, but the woman that you're referring to that showed up, that
she was ridiculous.
Yes, that is a very extremely privileged person.
I honestly feel safe saying that violence that has occurred at not just these marches and these encampments and these rallies, but this goes back to Black Lives Matter as well. The violence that has occurred are, I believe, plants and spooks and all sorts of people that are there to make it look a certain way. Because I cannot tell you the amount of protests and marches that I have been to. A lot. Big ones, really big ones. I've been to a lot of protests. And I have never seen...
It's just the start.
I have never seen violence organically based on the people at the protest, right? So I have never seen Black Lives Matter people, pro-Palestine people, any people in the movement engaging in violence. The only violence that I have seen on TV are what appears to me to either be Zio-Nazis or people pretending. And I think what they do is they kind of like, they what do you call it? They infiltrate. And they're there to cause a problem to make the movement look bad. That we know has happened because the Palestinian people and the supporters, they're just not they're not violent.
And this is
they're just not violent.
And this is their defense.
One question about the pro-Palestinian protester who was arrested. President Trump said that he was distributing pro-Hamas flyers and that he wanted him out of the country. What more can you tell us about any violation of his visa? What crime did he commit? And another follow-up with Mayor Adams, you said that you were going to be...
His actions are direct...
Can wait, stop it for a second. I need to correct her. He does not have a visa. He has a green card. That's a permanent resident. So again, we shouldn't even be splitting those hairs. The fact that she even brought that up should not... This is irrelevant. People have got to stop talking about it. I don't care what his stat... It doesn't matter. But yeah, and the fact that there was no criminal arrest, there was no criminal charge because he didn't do anything wrong. So now they're trying to come up with a reason as to why they can take somebody and detain them and send them across the country that hasn't been charged with a crime.
Well, let's hear what Mr. Holman has to say further.
State's foreign policy. That's a Secretary of State. That's a charge on the Secretary of State. We consider him a national security threat.
He's a national security threat. Oh, that's new.
But they didn't arrest him then.
You know what? I have to tell you, I actually agree with Mr. Holman. Mahmoud is a national security threat because of what we think is of important national security, the state of Israel. It's not important to just about everybody, but to the people in power, it's very important. And Mahmoud's message is a threat to the Zionist state.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, Falcon Eye. He's a threat to security, but yet was never arrested on the site, has not been charged with any crime whatsoever, and has no evidence of violence or anything having to do with him. So in what way could he be a threat if he hasn't done anything?
When you're on campus and they say, and I hear freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Can you stay in a movie theater and yell fire? Can you slander somebody verbally? Free speech has limitations, but when you go to a college campus, you incite protesting and locking down and taking over buildings and damaging property and handing out leaflets for Hamas, who is a terrorist organization.
Again,
coming
lies.
to this country either on a visa or becoming a resident alien is a great privilege.
You said visa again.
No, or he said resident alien. I am in fear. You fucking moron. Yes, those things are privileges. It is a privilege to get those things. It is. That is true. It is. However, the First Amendment applies to everyone, first of all. And second of all, you need due process. That's also part of what you're missing here. So even if he did do something, which he didn't, then there would be due process for that, because that's how it fucking works. Mm-hmm. This makes me so angry.
But there are rules associated with that. You might be able to get away with that stuff in the last administration, but you won't under this administration.
Monkeys. They're monkeys clapping. That's an insult to monkeys. That's an insult to monkeys. I shouldn't say that. Oh my God.
Much like they assume that the Luigi story is going to go away, this story is not going to go away.
No.
In fact, it's going to get so much worse. It is going to get so much.
I don't see how they need an off-ramp and they don't have one. Like right now, Trump is they're about wishing they had an off-ramp, and I don't see what they can do. They're going to have to figure out a way to backpedal in some way to get out of it.
Here's the thing, Zaina, and I will say this to everybody.
Abso-friggin-lutely
they did. Down to it, the fact of the matter is, despite all the things that you see right now, the Trump administration is peanuts compared to how bad the Biden administration was. The difference now, and again, this is the Trump effect, if you will. Everyone fucking pays attention to him.
Yeah. Zaina, I was in Atlanta and was standing like behind people getting tear gassed. I did not get tear gassed, but I absolutely. And in blue Atlanta, where they refused to even have a vote, even though they had all the signatures they needed from everybody in the vicinity of Cop City, but they still refused to have a vote in blue Atlanta. So yeah, this is not a blue thing.
I definitely agree, Falcon. And I do think that what's going to come of this is just, like I said, you have the Mangione story, you have the Khalil story.
Oh, he's got a hell of a lawsuit.
And this is just going to spiral and spiral and spiral. tell me if Trump is such a stable genius. Again, Trump acts on instinct. And so his instinct was to say, let's pull 400 million in funding from Colombia because that's going to make it better. No, that's just going to enrage people more.
But see, this is why when we've been saying all along, when I say Trump facilitates the revolution, and I really haven't always been entirely sure what that looks like. And it's still like, we're still going through, this is not something that happens overnight. But this is how it happens. Every group of people that he is cutting off from their services, cutting off from their benefits, firing from their jobs, whether it's he just let go a whole bunch of veterans with PTSD. Okay. If you don't think that every single one of these things is not going to create more Luigi Mangiones and that those are eventually going to coalesce, that's the revolution. Everything that he's doing is just adding more people part of that process. So it's just facilitating it.
It is. The dam is going to break.
Yeah.
At some point in the near future.
Okay, so wait until he uses military with real guns. Well, this is where he's going to be in a little bit of a predicament. And this is where he would have been in a predicament on January 6th if that really was what I would consider to be an insurrection, which I don't. But we would have to have the military full on support what he's doing.
Look at the response of the people who actually carry guns in this country when it came to Trump attacking Thomas Massie.
It didn't go well.
What do you think's going to happen
when he goes after?
If he really goes after things that are of importance to them? I don't mean to continually rain on the parade of liberals and even leftists, but the fact of the matter is, compared to the people who have guns, you're just a bunch of pussies and cucks. And I mean that not in an
offensive way. He means that in the nicest way possible.
What I mean is that you're not going to, if anybody has ever read The Prince by Machiavelli, there is something to be said by how are you willing to do what is necessary to affect change? And if what you're being shown that needs to be done in order to bring about that change is not being done, no matter how many people you get protesting in the street, no matter how many people get arrested, no matter how many people do these things, the only thing that is going to change things radically in the United States is when the people who are armed decide that they're not going to tolerate it from the government anymore. And when that happens, that's when change is going to happen, because then you're going to find out if they're really going to set up these cop cities to declare martial law on the people of the United States. And that's what it's going to come down to.
Well, right. But what I was going to say is that's what the point of the cop cities are most importantly, because I don't think that the military, first of all, for a president to use the military on its own citizens it's just, there's a lot of people that serve that have served that would not be with that. Yeah. And there's a lot of people high up in the military that won't be with that.
Not a chance.
And so this is, again, brings back to like why I was never felt like January 6th was a real threat, because there was no military involved in that. But if he really thinks that he's going to be able to do that, I don't see it, because there are things in place, whether people believe it or not, in our military where you can't have a president just decide willy-nilly to go do whatever they want. It doesn't work like that. And he can say all sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's realistic. However, you keep cutting off everybody's services and you keep pissing off the people on the red team that are your people and the people that can live off grid and the people that know how to handle shit. Now you've got a problem.
Unfortunately, Denise, we are at the point of no return with our republic. There is not going to be a gentle way out of this.
No.
It's not going to happen. They are showing clear as day that they're willing to go where empires crumble as they have before. The fact that you have the head of immigration lying on national television about whether or not a person has a visa or a green card, that's not by accident. He knows exactly what he's saying, and he's been given very specific talking points. And why must they be given specific talking points? Because a substantial portion of our foreign policy, which includes our money and power, is tied up in this little tiny state in the Middle East. So why can't we just, again, It's all easy
Which
to
I
see.
would then argue isn't really its own thing anyway.
It's not, but that's the point.
It's American empire is
It
why.
is.
That's the answer.
It is. And the people who are running the show right now are pushing it into a nosedive. We were heading in, and this is where we break from people like Tom Hartman. The Democrats are not going to save you.
No, no, no.
The only thing the Democrats will do is possibly slow it down a little bit. But that's it.
Well, and
we're all going to the same destination.
Yeah, I actually don't. The answer is not going to be in electoral politics. Electoral politics is not going to help us. It just isn't. We're not voting our way out of this. It's not going to. It doesn't matter. Third parties. We're not. The electoral process is.
And that's just the start.
Yeah, and it isn't. And here's the thing. Yeah, it's for Israel on the surface. That's the sort of like theater of it all. But at the end of the day, it's for us. It's for empire. Israel does our bidding. Israel is us. That's the whole point. When America took over empire after World War II and took it over from the British, it became our problem. So it's our empire. And yeah, the military, I don't see it getting
the
this.
one thing I will say in Zaina's defense, and it's absolutely true, the only way protesting matters is if it affects capital. That's it. That's the only way. If the protests at Columbia University is causing that university to lose endowments, lose undergrads, postgrads, that's a problem.
Well, then it gets to where the balance tips.
Correct.
Which donor do they care about more? And that's where Trump is. Does he have to appease? He's in a battle between his donors and his followers, his supporters, or his America First people who are not wanting us to be sending our resources to Israel.
Thank you very much for the $2, Chip. And look, Tom Hartman on policy is really good.
Yeah, he is.
The problem is that Tom Hartman refuses to accept that the party he was born into and grew up with, the party of FDR and JFK, no longer exists.
No, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I believe, in my opinion, we have seen our last Democratic president in this country. I do not think that this incarnation of the Democratic Party can win another nationwide seat. I don't think so. I think they're going to gradually trickle away. They'll exist in the states that they exist in, and they're going to gradually trickle away, and we'll be down to basically one major party, which is really where we are anyway.
Absolutely.
This just pulls the mask off the whole thing. But at the end of the day, all the Democrats are, and what everyone can see now, is new Coke, and nobody needs new Coke. Okay, so that's the problem. We already have a corporatist party that sucks the ass of the oligarchs. We already have that. We do not need another one, right? That doesn't really do anything else but make platitude salads and sit there and focus on wedge issues that make them look cool and good. So I think the Democrats have seen their last presidency. I do. That's my prediction. I do not think this is going to be dependent on what we're going to do. And we have an opportunity to do something. Yes, exactly. And the only way this is going to happen is going to be through a general strike. We need a general strike. We need yellow vests in the streets like they do in France. And it needs to not be, it's not partisan, it's a class war. And people need to stop worrying about the left and the right and start understanding it's a top and a bottom. That's it. And unless you're one of the people that's in charge, you know where you are. You're a bottom.
Brett, people are too awake now. It's too obvious now.
Yeah.
Some elections will go one way, other elections will go another
nationally,
way.
They don't have the numbers anymore. They're in Florida, it's like 20-1 Republicans to Democrats, and that's only Republicans to Democrats, whereas the majority of people actually register as no party. The Democrats will not have the numbers. They are bleeding by the day. So if you see how they just handled this last race and their numbers are only going down, again, I am not a math person. But I personally believe that this Democratic Party, this neoliberal Clinton-esque, this Democratic incarnation of party has seen its last president. Now, if at any point there's some sort of like Democratic Workers' Party or a Democratic, whatever, or it's a different incarnation of this party, then that might change. This party of the Democrats will not have another president. And I just don't see it happening.
And the one thing that Trump was right about when he talks about the fact that the GOP outnumber the Dems 5-1 in terms of county infrastructure around the country. You can argue that, well, you have your rural counties and then you have the city counties. Well, let me tell you something. It's never been like that, ever. There has been domination. There was the Southern dominance of the Democrats. There was the Western dominance of the Republicans. You know, there's been different periods throughout history, but one thing that hasn't happened in over 100 years is you're not seeing basically entire states blanketed by one party. That had changed for a long time. Today, much like if you look back at what the Deep South looked like post-Reconstruction up until pretty much JFK, it was almost 100 years where it was like that. And now we're there again, where there is such a domination on one side from the other when it comes to the differences. There's no such thing as liberal Republicans anymore. And there's only conservative Democrats. And then there's really, you know, sort of nationalistic Republicans. The difference is that there is a growing libertarian bent in this country that also has left populism mixed in with it. Now, to me, that's the only future we have, because libertarians like their second.
Yeah, but my thought is, until basically it's going to be a race to the finish. Are the majority of people going to get their head out of their ass and realize that it has nothing to do with left, right, red, blue, all of that shit, and all of that is an illusion to keep us all oppressed by capital? And will people realize that in enough time to save us from the climate inferno, as Jordan calls it? I don't know the answer, but I do know that when people want to know how it's going to change, every single person that begins to realize that this has nothing to do with your label or your partisan politics, and you start to understand that this is a class war and get on board with that, and by the way, it's global, then and only then will we make progress. As long as you have the red and the blue sitting there going back and forth and playing their stupid games and thinking that what we see in Washington is actual and not just fucking theater. And as soon as more people realize that and understand that what we need to do is have people in the streets by the millions, and that we need to be working towards a mutual aid and a community coalition that is able to do that. And until we do that, we're circling a fucking drain. We're not voting our way out of this. We already know for a fact that the will of the majority of people is not represented in electoral politics, and people that are elected and the policies that they enact generally only serve like what, 0.1% of the population?
Pretty much.
So we're not voting our way out of this. It's done. Either you realize that, and you have to understand that that is kind of scary and uncomfortable because we don't really know what that looks like, but we need to figure out something because it isn't going to fix itself. So I am supportive of the idea of a general strike. The three biggest labor organizations, unions in this country, have coordinated to have their collective bargaining agreements up for negotiation at the same time, which is a perfect opening. And everybody needs to be thinking May Day 2028, because in my opinion, if we do not have a general strike before we have another election, we're done. Like, it's just done. Like, it's just at this point, like, there's not even a point in pretending that we have any semblance of any sort of, you know, government here. Like, this is silly at this point.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. We really appreciate you all being here. Remember, it's a class war, nothing more. We'll see you Monday.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.